Hey guys, so the last thing we're going to go ahead and work on for our deep dive is going to be creating at least one enemy to allow to fight against us. So you can do this as many times as you want. You can do it for all your enemies or you can do it for one of them to add a different variation between them. That's kind of up to you. But we're going to break this into two parts. The first part is picking one of our enemies that we're going to edit and change its code. And then the second part is then creating an actual shooting sprite for our enemies to then use to fight against us. So, to begin, we're going to go ahead and pick one of our enemies. So I'm going to pick my second enemy that I have in order to edit its code. Once I have that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for this block of code here, because the movement is going to have to be tweaked just a little bit. So what we're going to do is, we're going to first, underneath the go to X, add another block. So we're going to go inside of our motions tab, and we're going to add a point towards. Okay. We're going to change mouse pointer to player since we want it to face our player as it's trying to shoot. The next thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to push back how far the Y position can go. So we're going to change the negative 180 to negative 185. We're going to remove this change Y by negative 10 and delete it. And we're going to add a move 10 steps instead. And we're going to change the 10 to a 4. Once we have this, the next thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to create a new variable. So we're going to click on our variable tab. We're going to make a variable and we're going to leave it for all sprites. And we're going to call this bullet counter. Oops. And then we're going to click on OK. You can go ahead and hide this because we don't actually need it to show up on our game. But now we're going to pick an empty spot and we're going to add new code. We're going to click on our controller tab and we're going to scroll down and add when I start as a clone. Still inside of control, we're going to add a forever. And inside of this forever, we're going to go into our variable tab and we're going to go ahead and add a change bullet counter by 1. So the idea is that every time the clone of our enemy shoots a bullet, it's going to also have an ID number so that we're able to know how many are being shot at the same time, and that way they each have their own sets. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to create a list. So if you notice right underneath, so still inside of our variable tab, there is a make a list option. The make a list option is specifically used for when we're creating clones and we want our clones to do something. So we're going to click on make a list and we're going to leave it for all sprites. And the first one is going to be X position. We're going to make another list, call this Y position. And we're going to make a last one and call this direction. And we're going to click on OK. So we're going to hide these lists because we don't need it to show up. But those are the three main things that we need to know in order for our shooting to work. We need to know its X and Y position and what direction it's facing, so that we make sure that when it's shooting, it's trying to shoot at our player. So right underneath our change block, we're going to go ahead and scroll down. And you notice that once you've made a list, it now shows new blocks that we haven't used before. We're going to add a add thing to direction. So that's the first block. And we're going to add 3 of them. On the thing bubbles that each of them has, we're going to go inside of our blue motions tab and we're going to scroll down until we find these blue bubbles that we have here. The first one is going to be X position, the second one is going to be Y position, and the last one is going to be direction. We're also going to change these so that it matches our blue bubble. So this one is going to be X position to match with our X position. This one is going to be Y position to match with our Y position. And then this is going to stay direction to match with direction. The next thing we're going to do is click on control, and we're going to add a create clone of myself. We're going to change this later on because we're actually going to be creating clones of the actual bullet, but since we don't have it, we're just going to leave it here as placeholder. And then, still instead of control, we're going to add a wait 1 second. And what this is going to do is it's going to pick different times that it's going to shoot the bullet for us. So it's not just constantly shooting at the player. So to make sure that there's a little bit of randomness, we're going to add a pick random. And we're going to change this 10 to a 4. Okay. As always, guys, you can always play around with the pick random numbers so that it has a little bit more variation. I will just be careful not to make it too big because you might have some enemies not shooting at all. This is a good amount of time where it's shooting enough but not too much. But again, you can always test it out and play it. The next thing we're going to go ahead and work on is going to be creating a new bullet for our enemy.